I'm different than most people. I'm high anxiety. I'm an overthinker. I have depression, ADHD, all that stuff. And going into the county, not knowing, that was tough. That was really tough. Now your son gotta tell people that my dad's not coming home when he's supposed to because he got into a fight over a blue ball.
When an ex-con gets released from prison, what they do in the first 90 days is critical. If they fail to get their affairs in order and find gainful employment, then 9 times out of 10, they will find themselves in a cell once again. However, 1/3 of lawbreakers will never reoffend. For them, reentry began well before their release. These are their success stories.
There's no reason or justifiable excuse for what I did back then, but 19-year-old me would have begged to differ. Back then I was 19, coming into adulthood. I had graduated high school late, and by late I mean at 19, because most people graduate around 16, 17. But I felt adulthood creeping up on me, a little pressure. At the time, my girlfriend, my son's mother, she was pregnant, and I had my mom on my back about getting a job and paying rent and stuff like that. And I never had a job before, So at 19, I started looking, and as time went on, I couldn't find a job. Back then in 2014, 2013, and them years early on, it was harder to find a job, a lot harder than it is nowadays, So I had a buddy of mine, he was in the National Guard, and I told him I was interested. So he gave me his training sergeant's phone number, and I called the training sergeant, and we talked, and he told me I had a fine from when I was a juvenile for $650, and I had to pay that off before I could enroll or be recruited and go through that process. And not having a job, I didn't have $650 to pay that. I felt like I was stuck, between a rock and a hard place type of situation, because I'm like, how am I going to do this? Eventually, I got the idea from somebody who was into the crime life and burglaries and robberies and all that, and he always had money on him, and I became interested. And I told myself, I'm only going to do this until I get the amount of money to join the National Guard. But that's not how it happened. I got greedy, and I kept going. I kept thinking, like, I'm just going to do this forever. You know what I mean? Like, why would I want to work now? I mean, I'm making a couple dollars. I'm making decent money being a criminal. And then that cost me 8 years of my life. First day waking up out of jail, only got like 4 hours of sleep for real. It's hard to sleep. It's hard to get adjusted. Yeah, it's time to see what today holds though. Growing up, my father wasn't always present. So I didn't really have a father figure, But knowing what I know now, as far as who I am as a person with anxiety and depression and stuff like that, I know that my father has similar things, and he couldn't always physically be around because he hasn't learned how to deal with them things. So I always forgave him. I just wish he was there more so I could have went a different route. I got locked up when I was 19 years old back in 2014. I was just released last year, January 2022. I went to jail for burglaries. I was charged with 23 burglaries and about 43 charges total. It was my first time in prison. First time in the county prison, first time in state prison. I did do a couple days in juvenile when I was 14, but that was a couple days. That doesn't, you know, it was nothing like the county or state prison. Going into the county at 19 years old was difficult. I'm different than most people. I'm high anxiety. I'm an overthinker. I have depression, ADHD, all that stuff. And going into the county, not knowing, that was tough. That was really tough. Going upstate, going upstate was hard. Um, you know, you have to learn how to adapt and be around so many different people. You're literally around hundreds of people a day, every single day. And when you're around that many people, you're around so many different personalities. And that's hard to deal with, because you can go from one guy and he'll be having a good day, and you'll go to somebody that you're used to talking to. When you're done talking to him, you'll go to the next guy and he's pissed off, and the next guy's depressed. Just so many different emotions in prison, so many different personalities. Being in prison taught me a lot. It helped me grow mentally. So I actually met with a fill-in for my PO yesterday, and I'll actually be meeting him this morning because he wasn't in yesterday. But yeah, he should be here next maybe like 2 or 3 hours or so. But hoping it goes good. You know, one day at a time, one day at a time. So while in prison, my first couple years were rough. I was still hanging around the, bad crowds, doing dumb shit, fighting. Um, I was discovering myself. You know what I mean? I was a young kid. I was 19. I didn't know anything. But as time went on, I sought knowledge, and I preferred to be around the lifers. And a lifer is somebody who has a life sentence in prison, somebody who may never get to go home again. But the lifers, a majority of them, they have a different way of seeing things, of thinking about things. They've been down for a long time. They're wise, so I stuck around them a lot. The key moment to me changing who I wanted to be and the betterment of myself was, one day, my favorite thing upstate was playing handball. I always play handball and I like to work out. But I have an anger problem. My anger problem in prison was major. I got better out here, and I'm still working on it. Anger is a hard thing, but I'm a lot better now from what I was then. But handball, one of my key moments to knowing that I needed to do better and be different so that I could survive out here was getting a grip on my anger. And the key moment I'm explaining to you is a day that I was playing handball, and we were losing, and as a competitive person, I don't like to lose, so I got angry and I start, flipping out and getting into an argument with the guy, and we got into a fight, and I had to be taken to the hole. We call it the hole. The proper term is RHU, restricted housing unit. Basically, you come out for just a small amount of time, and during the day, and the rest of the day you're in the cell, and you could be back there for a fight. Usually 45 days is a fight. You don't get to mingle with the population. So I was in the hole. When I got out the hole, one of the lifers that I talked to that had seen the fight, he pulled me to the side. He said, "Kane, come here, man." And I'm like, "What's up, man?" And he's like, And he was like, that was stupid, man. I'm like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Because I just got out the hole. It's 45 days later, and he's pulling me to the side telling me that was stupid. I'm like, I just got out the hole. What are you talking about? I didn't do anything. You know what I mean? But he's like, you got into a fight over handball. And I'm like, yeah, but, dude said some shit to me, and he was like, no. He was like, the root of the problem was handball. And I'm like, nah, man, dude, I was still in my ways, stuck in my ways. But he told me, he said, you tell me all the time. He's like, you want to go home so you can see your son. He was like, me, I don't get to go home. I would love to go home and spend time with my kids. He was like, you got a chance. He said, you got into a fight over handball. He was like, in a couple years, at the time, I only had like 2 years in, so I had 6 years left. But he was like, in a couple years, you're going to see parole. And they may look at that and be like, oh, you got into a fight. And they may not let you go home because of that. Because of a little blue ball. He was like, and then you gotta call your son and you gotta tell him, daddy ain't coming home because he got into a fight over a blue ball. And they looked at me, he was like, a grown man getting into a fight over a blue fucking ball. Upstate where ain't nothing but supposed men around here. So when he told me that, and then he told me, he was like, now your son gotta tell people that my dad's not coming home when he's supposed to, because he got into a fight over a blue ball. He was like, now because of that fight, he was like, they might tack on another 2 years or a year. They might give you a hit when you go see parole, and they might tell you, sit for a little longer until you learn how to act. And that right there, that struck a nerve with me, a good one. And I thought about it, I went back to my cell later on, and I just laid there and I repeated that conversation in my head. And I'm like, I don't want to do this no more. I don't want to do this no more. One of the hardest things about prison was knowing I had a son out here. And the only way he could see me was through pictures. He could hear my voice on the phone. But, yeah.
Okay, so I went for this interview, and I went across the highway and shit, and yeah, cause that's how you gotta get to the sheets, is you gotta cross the damn highway, and I almost got hit by a car. So, and then first and foremost, I had to wait like 15 minutes to cross the intersection to get to the sheets. So I got in there, I did the interview. She told me that she would text me and let me know if I got the job. And she texted about 15 minutes later and let me know that I got it. But I told her I'm gonna have to turn it down because it's not worth losing my life on the highway, because the job was third shift as well. So I'd be crossing the highway at nighttime, and we're not doing that. So I have to keep applying at other jobs, but it's all good.
So the last 2 years of my prison sentence, COVID came around, And when I tell you, from my personal experience, when we started seeing it on the news, we were like, oh, it's just another sickness, another flu coming around. But as it kept going, as the days went, the weeks went, all you started seeing on the news now is COVID, COVID, COVID. People dying. And I'm like, wow, we got a plague running through our country right now. This is real. And me personally, it put me in a state of panic, because I'm like, damn, on my last 18 months of my prison sentence, there's a plague running around and I don't know who's going to kill in my family. Who is it going to kill? So it caused me a lot of stress. A lot of stress. Most people, when they get close to going home, the only thing they stress about is, am I going to get out? Am I going to make parole? But me, I'm sitting here stressing, like, telling myself, I'm praying, I'm praying, literally praying to God, and I'm asking him, if any of my family members or people that I love are going to die by this virus, then please let them die after I see them. Let me see my family. Because I didn't get many visits. You know what I mean? So I didn't get to see my family a lot. So that was a big stressful thing. And then on top of that, when COVID came around for safety procedures and health protocols, they started only letting us out in the beginning of COVID, 15 minutes a day. You either had the option to get a shower or get a phone call. And that was stressful in itself right there because, everybody wants to feel clean. But you also want to get on the phone and be able to talk to your folks and see how everyone's doing. Almost everyone upstate looks forward to a phone call. And then on top of that, 15 minutes out a day, now you're trapped in a cell with somebody for 23 hours and 45 minutes a day. Almost 24 hours a day, you're trapped in the cell with somebody. Now tensions are rising. So many people were up there fighting their cellies and stuff because, you're trapped in a box. You're trapped in a box. Not even just a box, a bathroom. And now because of COVID, we had to eat in our cells. So they bring the food to the block and then they would feed us through the door. So now you're eating in a bathroom with another man in there. So it was stressful. I think the worst part about being upstate was when you got on the phone and somebody would tell you something tragic that happened, like a death in the family or something bad, and there's just nothing that you could do about it. You're in a box that you just can't escape. You feel hopeless, helpless. You start blaming yourself. You start telling yourself, that wouldn't have happened if I was home. And then, you put yourself in a depression and it can stick with you for a while. I unfortunately, while I was upstate, I lost some family members, and sometimes it became hard to call home because you didn't know if you were going to get some bad news. What I did while upstate was I played handball, like I said. I worked out. I initially started working out to lose some weight, and then I took notice that working out helped mentally while being in there. It was a good way to relieve stress. And I got to relieve stress, and I started noticing that working out actually helped me with some of my mental illnesses, such as depression and overthinking, anxiety. It was just a great way to relieve. So that's why I worked out. And then I kept going because then I created goals for myself, body-wise. I'm like, you know what? I want my body to look like this. And that was the first time in my life I ever had a goal for myself. And it was different. It was a different feeling when I took notice to that. I'm like, wow, I set a goal for myself. And I accomplished it. And now I have more workout goals to this day. And, for the first time in my life, I'm proud of myself. I've never been proud of myself before. Who I am today is completely different from who I was when I was 19 years old. And I get goosebumps when I talk about that very specific thing because who I am today is somebody that I'm proud of. Who I was back then was a disgrace to my family and to my son. My constant goal in life nowadays is just to keep striving and to work on myself every day. There's two things that stuck with me from prison. I was reading a book once, and there was a quote in there. I don't know who said it, but I just remember the quote, and it stuck with me. It's one of my favorite quotes, but the quote is, "There is no better foundation to build upon than rock bottom." And when I read that, I was like, prison is my rock bottom. So when I get released, I've already made one brick. I've already laid one brick down just by getting released to building a better foundation. But my goal in everyday life is to constantly get better. My biggest thing is working on my anger and my triggers and things like that. So, and I'm gonna always be able to do that because a lifer always told me one time. He told me he had said, because I told him, I'm like, I'm a grown man, you know, and he stopped me. He said, hold on. He said, one thing I want you to do for yourself is, he was like, don't get me wrong. He said, you a grown man, you know, physically. He was like, but I want you to tell yourself that you're a growing man. And he was like, I want you to tell yourself that until the day you die. He's like, because if you consider yourself just a grown man and not a growing man, he was like, then you're going to stunt your growth. He's like, but as a growing man, you know that you can constantly learn and take in knowledge. And that stuck with me. So I'm a growing man. That's my goal, man, to just do better. Officially 1 week out of prison, and I officially have set up my business. I am now a LLC and owner of Made in Poverty clothing brand. I got a few logos made up. Still haven't yet ordered my printing press, but you know, I'm gonna get this brand out there and it's gonna be dope. In January 23rd of 2022, I successfully made parole. That was the day I stepped out of prison. One of the best feelings in the world. I felt like a new man. One of my favorite things of coming home was on the ride home was I started realizing there's a lot of things that I missed. Like colors. You know, in prison, the walls are gray. You know, the walls are gray. Everyone wears like a type of brown. We wear these brown uniforms. We call them browns. It's an odd brown. It's not a brown that you'll see out here. It's a weird looking brown. It's like a burgundy brownish. But on the drive home, you know, I seen so many colors. I seen reds and greens and blues. I seen paintings on the walls down in Philly. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, colors. You know what I mean? That's odd. Like, I missed colors. That was different. Getting out of prison, the first thing, you know, when you come home from prison after a long time, after a long stint in prison, the best way I can explain it, how it feels, is you feel like you're late for something, but you just don't know what. You're just like, what do I do? I mean, where am I going? You know what I mean? Like, there's so much you want to do, but you just don't know where to start. You don't know where to go. It's different. A year later, I feel normal out here. You know, I feel good. I still have, you know, I guess what we would call as ex-convicts and inmates, we would call it PTSD. One thing I did upstate, because I seen a lot of people get assaulted and staff get assaulted, other inmates get assaulted, people get into fights, some vicious stuff with stabbings and people getting hit with locks. So one thing I did to protect myself was when I walked around the track out in the yard, like if I was walking with somebody and we were just talking, anytime somebody called my name, if they were behind me, I would tuck my chin and I would turn like this because I don't want somebody just coming up and cracking me. And I noticed I still do that. A year later out of prison, I still do that. When I want to look behind me and check, I tuck my chin. uh, it sounds crazy, it's weird, but it stuck with me. First thing I did when I came home was a brother of mine that I met up in prison, Tito. He took me to get some clothes, so we went to get some clothes, and we went to McDonald's. And one of my biggest reality check for me coming home was when we went to McDonald's, because he actually bought me clothes, but I treated him and his son, my homie, to some McDonald's, because I was like, I want some McDonald's, and I came home with a couple of dollars. I saved up some money while I was up there. That was hard to do. You only make about 19 cents an hour, and you only work for 4 hours upstate. So imagine how long it took me to save the $3,000 that I came home with. We went to McDonald's, and all we did was buy some McChickens and some fries and a drink. I got 2 McChickens. Tito got like one McChicken and a small fry, and his son got 2 McChickens and some fries, and we each got a drink. And when they told me the total price, they were like, it was $20-something. And I'm like, $20-something? All this back then would have been like about $7, $8, $9, $10. And I'm like, I immediately thought to myself, I'm like, I need a job. And I got on it. Just like that, I got on it. Started looking around. The economy's different out here. One of the hardest things out here is, I had 8 years of having to be defensive, having to stick up for myself, and thinking I had to fight and stuff like that. So now, one thing I'm trying to escape out here is when somebody says something that I don't like, I don't need to be defensive about it. You know what I mean? Because people out here move and talk differently than people in there. People out here, they may give you constructive criticism, and I'll take offense to it. Like, oh, you're trying to tell me what to do. Like, I won't say it, but I'll think it in my head, and I'll get mad. And then I have to check myself. I'm like, this person's only trying to help you, King. You don't have to get mad. They're not telling you what to do. They're just giving you advice. But when I was in prison, people like to tell you what to do. They like to try to tell you what to do. Try to make you move how they want to move and how they move. And if you move differently, that upsets them, because there's a lot of narcissists in prison, man. But that's what I'm trying to escape now, is my prison mentality. A year later, I got a good support team out here though now. I got my mom and my sisters, Christy and Ashley. I got my nieces that I love, my nephews, my cousin. They've been a big help. One of the biggest things when you're upstate is seeing people go home and then watching them come back. And they'll sit there and tell you, oh, it's a setup, it's a trap, but it's not. Parole is easy if you want it to be easy. One thing my cousin told me when I came home, and that stuck with me as well, was he's like, you got 12 years of parole to do. He was like, and that's a long time. He was like, but if you're doing everything that you need to do and you're acting accordingly and you're just being a civilian, a citizen, a regular person, and you're just working and you're minding your business, he's like, you don't need to worry about parole. You're not even going to know your own parole. He's like, you won't care about that because you're not worried about going to prison. You're not worried about looking over your shoulder all the time. And that became true. I just work. I come home, I spend time with my son when I can. I play video games, I work out, and that's it. I don't hang out on the streets no more. I don't do nothing. I don't hang out with old friends who are still in the mix. But parole is easy, man. Parole is easy. The only time you know you're on parole is when your parole agent hits you up like, hey, I'm gonna stop by for a couple minutes. And you're like, all right. But my parole, my parole agent's cool. He does his job. He doesn't treat me like a piece of shit or like I'm different. He treats me like a human, and I treat him with respect back. That's all it is. You don't need to come home and because he's an authority figure, you feel like you gotta be like, aggressive, like macho and all that with them. Just treat him with respect. They'll treat you back with respect. And if you don't, there's proper ways to go about getting a different PO. So, today's date marks the 16th of January, 2023. On the 23rd of this year, I will have been home for a year. In 11 months of me being home, I busted my ass. When I was 19, I didn't give myself the opportunity or a chance to learn anything, to experience anything in life. So I didn't know how to drive. I didn't have a license. I didn't have anything. So when I came home, I already knew mentally what I was going to do. And I knew that it was going to be hard work. But I know one thing, I was never going to go back to burglaries. I came home, I busted my ass. I learned how to drive. I got my license. I got a car. I got a 2018 Hyundai Sonata Sport. Really nice car, you know what I mean? I'm proud of myself for that. I now have an apartment, Me and my girlfriend, we live together. So I got everything in a matter of 11 months. I got everything. And now I'm just working, continuously working, saving, so eventually I can have my own business. It was my first time in prison. It was definitely my last. And by that, I mean, I will never catch a new case again. I'll never get a new charge. I'm not a criminal. I'm not a criminal anymore. Prison's not it. We not going back to prison.
It's just the beginning, the start of the mission, the journey to winning, the cycle was ending. I'm free, it feel like a dream. Pinch me, I gotta stay woke, survive my parole. Eyes on the goal, mode on go. My answer is no to your guns and your dope. That ain't looking out, that's my neck in the rope. Oh, hanging myself, that's playing myself.
Shut him, man. Fuck it. Oh, we gonna put that one in the back. Got you. It's on my books. Oh, shit, my man. Hey, what's up, bro?
Hey, what's up?
Hello.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Hey, why you always got this up, brother?
None of the time that I did was wasted. Plans I made them, quick them and saved them. Oodles and noodles, I ate them. Staying up late all the way to the AM. Life on the line, no time for play. My debts, I paid them. Apologies made them. The ones who helped me get through, I thank them. Back to the basics, working and saving, planning and praying. Know what I'm saying? Minimum wage way better than pennies. I worked in prison, I could work in the Denny's. Ain't greedy no more. It's no longer in me. I'm grateful. Ain't stopping for nothing. Success in my veins.
If you think that you or someone you know would like to be featured on an upcoming episode of Surviving Parole, please have them send us a message on Instagram @Surviving Parole or YouTube @Surviving Parole.